scarce.
Yeah, it's the sounds of JM and J something. If I had you, you're listening to Gauteng's official feel good radio station, and it's simple. Our mandate is very, very simple. This is what we do.
Sam Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place.
And our focus is simple. It's CSR, shared value, social innovation, and social capital. And it's positive news. And that's really what we're trying to do, is to add to the discourse, but in a very positive way. Now, here's something that you might know. Youth unemployment in South Africa is at a crisis point, sitting at over 46% according to Stats SA. But in rural KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, a powerful shift is underway. Non-profit organization Tanda is turning fields into futures through their food security and economic development initiative, now with a sharp focus on youth and agroecology. Joining me now on the line on our social impact show is Angela Larkin, Executive Director and co-founder of Tanda, to unpack how they're planting seeds of change for the next generations of South Africa. Angela, good morning. Happy Monday to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Are you happy on this Monday?
I am. I'm feeling optimistic.
Yeah, me too. So happy Monday to you. Okay, let's start with the reality. 46.1% youth unemployment. Why do you believe agroecology is a powerful and practical response to this crisis?
Well, I think because we've seen it work already with adults and the elderly in our community. Despite very fertile soils and lots of land in the community where we're working in rural KZN, people just weren't farming. They might have had a few mealies and some beans at their home, but that was it. And 9 years ago, we started a farming program, and it has just grown enormously. The first year that we ran it, the farmers produced 26,000 rands worth of produce, but they've actually harvested 43 million rands worth of food value now since we started, just over the last 9 years. So we know It can work, and there's no reason it can't work for youth.
Yeah, and I wasn't familiar with this term until I went through this press release and obviously then started doing a little bit of research. But for people that really want to understand what agroecology is, it's really agriculture plus ecology plus social justice.
That's right. It's working with the land instead of trying to rake everything you can out of it. So it's a more sustainable approach. It's using regenerative farming practices to make sure that you're putting back into the soil as much as you are getting out of it, so that your soil will last over time, and it will then also combat a lot of the negative effects that are coming out of climate change or causing climate change.
Yeah. These social impact projects are so important. I think it's very important for us to know what's happening in the country and who's driving what, who's doing what. Talk to me about your work, because you've been working in rural farming communities for well over a decade. But what inspired this pivot to focus more intentionally on youth?
Yeah, so the thing is, there's not a lot of youth in agriculture at the moment. In our programs, only 17% of the participants are youth. And I think that's sort of across the board. Farming is seen as sort of uncool. It's not the way to go. But yet farming, the youth are the future of farming. If we don't engage them in farming, there will be no farmers in the next 30 years. So we've got to find a way to bring them into this. And we've also got this huge unemployment problem.
Yeah.
I think it's a matter of finding the right way to engage the youth and to make it something that is really appealing, because obviously it can be, when you're when you're becoming an agripreneur and growing an agribusiness, it's very exciting when it's successful and it's doing well. That is very cool, right? So it's just about really helping youth get to that point. And I think a lot of projects around the country haven't really figured out how to do that yet. I think a lot of people felt like you have to have stipends, you have to bring in the hydroponics, and you've got to have this and that, and it's the technology and all of this. And I'm not saying those things don't help, but at the end of the day, we also just have to figure out how do we make a basic small business work for youth. With the most basic infrastructure, with the most basic inputs, because that is what's going to be replicable across the country. And to me, that's much more sustainable. Whilst the other thing might be nice for an internship, but
Yeah.
it may not be what keeps that person involved, and it may not set them up for success long term.
Yeah, I think
So
you
we're quite
raise
committed to figuring that out.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think you raised some really interesting points. So let me throw that question at you. How do you engage youth? How do you get them interested? And how do you talk to them about agroecology or becoming an agro entrepreneur that speaks to kind of where they are at the moment? We kind of live in an environment at the moment where everything is instant. We are inundated with what success looks like on social media. And I can only imagine, I'm not a farmer, we youth, or not just youth, but I think ordinary people think of the farmer as this potentially somebody who's in a khaki brook with long socks and brown shoes. And I know that there's been a concerted effort, not just through what you're doing, but platforms like Food from Mzansi. They profile a lot of young and up and coming farmers that look very different. But what is the formula? What have you worked out? How do we engage them?
Yeah, so we know that of the 17% of our farmers that are youth, we know that 98% of them want farming to be their long-term, their full-time, livelihood. So it's just a matter of getting them to that point and not having them drop out before they get there, right? So what we are doing is sort of working along the lines of what you said, where they need some sort of instant feedback. We sort of mentoring and holding their hand to develop business plans. So one is a very small scale in terms of what can you do over the next 3 months, and then let's put it into practice and measure it against what your goals were. And then the other one is, what is your dream? So how do we go bigger? And so you're sort of working with two things at once. One is the instant reward and the reality, and then growing that slowly. But the other one is really pushing the boundary of what's possible for them, so that they start to see what might be possible. I
Yeah.
mean, I think a big problem in our community is there just aren't successful examples of people growing on more than half a hectare on their own. So their viewpoint is very limited of what's possible, because it's very risky, because they've never seen anyone do it. But if we can support a few people, a few youth, through sort of an incubator project and a case study farm, where we can actually get them on their feet and going on a larger scale, then we can showcase to the community and to all the other youth, what really can happen. And then we've got sort of a roadmap and the business plans to support that, but
Yeah.
really building it up from a 10 by 10 plot, and then going a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. To me, that's the most sustainable approach, and that's what we're busy with.
Yeah, I think one of the other things, Angela, that is noteworthy, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, is that 3.6 million rand in direct income that was generated through your program in 2024. One would argue that that's probably the best example of the success of this program. But maybe it would benefit us just to get a sense of what that kind of economic impact means for a rural household and community.
Yeah, I mean, it's life changing. Um, the average annual household income in the community where we're working is 14,600 rand per year. And the unemployment rate, according to the census data, is 90%. So when you bring in that sort of income, it's literally doubled the household income in all of the households that are working with us. But in the ones that are doing more, it's obviously done a lot more. So it means that they can buy school shoes. It means that they can buy uniforms. It means the kids start school on time because they can do those two things. It means that they are eating more protein, which means less stunting because they can afford to buy meat and eggs. It's really changing a lot of the foundational issues in a community like this. And then it's also giving people a step up to be able to do more. It also enables them to save a little bit so that they can buy more seeds or seedlings or the diesel that they need for the pumps, and slowly scale their business over time. But it really is making a phenomenal difference.
Yeah, I love that. And it deals with the other aspects that we often don't talk about. And when I say we often don't talk about, we do talk about it. There's enough research done on it, but I don't think it's just part of the day-to-day conversations that we have with each other. It's food insecurity. A lot of these programs also deal with food insecurity. And there's a lot of education and transfer of knowledge that's also happening in terms of how to look after the soil, how to manage the spaces. So there's a lot of direct positive consequences of running a program like this. Talk to me about the vision behind your youth case study farm.
Yes, so this is where we want to set up a 4-hectare farm where we can put 8 youth there, with each having half a hectare, and really implement the business plans that they've developed. And it's a way for them to really support each other. At the moment, the youth are very spread out across a very rural community, so they don't get a lot of chances to engage with each other unless we bring them together for workshops. So this would be a way for them to really work together on a more intensive basis, almost like an incubator, and scale those business plans that they've developed and really see what works, doesn't work. And it also gives us a little bit of a petri dish to measure and monitor and see what works, so that we can say, okay, this particular one is replicable, this works, or this doesn't really work. And then we can really know, what does it take to create a full-time minimum wage role from farming? And then what does it take to do more than that? But let's just start there. Um, as an alternative, because there are just not enough jobs out there. So how do we create jobs, and what does it take, and how big of a piece of land do the youth need? What crops should they be growing? And then what is the impact on the community? Because, as you said, it has so many ripple effects in terms of being able to support other members of the community once they're producing a lot.
I think the other challenge, maybe not a challenge, but I wonder how you view this, is that if we're going to grow farmers and we're going to get young people into this space, because there's opportunities for real job creation. And there's an opportunity, I mean, the classic example of generating 3.6 million rand, it's debatable for some whether that's a big amount. But if you consider that, as you've said, the average income is just over 14,000 rand a year, that kind of cash injection into a community is phenomenal. And all of a sudden, the world is open to you. How does technology, number one, and there's an app, I'm trying to think of it now. I don't know if it's the eFarmer app or the Cooler app. There's also, I think, Hello Choice is an app, and Freshling as an app, that provides this kind of, it plays this role between farmers and retailers, right? Where these apps play this almost like an agricultural marketplace. Your view in terms of using technology to increase that revenue opportunity. Young people seem to love technology. They seem to have an understanding for it. So using technology, and then in the kind of collaboration and partnership, we need retailers of all sizes to be able to link in, so that when we get these young people into the proper farming mindset and they're growing these crops, that there's some kind of distribution network.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think technology will be critical for this. It's not something we've harnessed too much in the past, because we wanted to keep the farming very simple, and we were really just trying to change the status quo in the community and build it up slowly. And for a lot of elderly people, it's not the answer, and it's difficult to engage with, as you know. So we haven't, and we've also been really focused on finding local markets and supplying rural communities, because they have a harder time accessing fresh produce. So that's where we focused our supply. But with these youth farms, it will be different, and it will be very critical that they engage with those apps to find the markets. And as you said, it's so important that the retailers also come on board and support as well. That's going to be critical, especially as we start to scale youth where they are as well in their own farms. There's going to be a lot of need for markets, and I think the technology can be critical for that.
Yeah. Tell me quickly, and I like this success story, but just for the benefit of our listeners who are sitting in their cars right now, driving to work, going to coffee shops, wherever they're heading to meetings. Some of them are fortunate enough to go to golf, whatever. Tell me about Mzwandile Khule's story.
Yeah, Mzwandile is a wonderful guy. He's been farming for a while as part of a group of farmers, of youth farmers, and he attended, um, and it's sort of through thick and thin. I mean, he's been through floods, he's been through heat waves, he's stuck with it. And one of his proudest moments is getting other youth involved. And he says he doesn't care that if people don't think it's cool, he's able to support his child. And he says when he plants, he's thinking about how many brinjal I need to plant to buy school shoes for my child. And that's what keeps him going. So he's a wonderful individual. And we did a workshop recently, a series of workshops on creating a business plan. And then we had a competition. So we let the youth submit their business plans. And the two winners of the competition, got to attend a external workshop with on building an agri-business. And so he attended that. And since attending that, he is very excited to expand his operation. So he's actually started at his house, setting up a bigger operation. And he's put together all the fencing with just scraps that he's been able to find. He is missing irrigation, but he's watering by hand for now, so that's obviously limiting, but that's all he can do. But he's managed to fence it all from animals with scraps, and he's just a wonderful example of someone who can be a real pioneer, and I think can really set the path for other youth in the community. Around the country, really.
I love that story because it's also self-reliance. And here's a young man who's identified what he needs to do. He has to play his part in changing his future. And that's really how we, as South Africans in general, are going to dig ourselves out of any of the holes we find ourselves. We have to be self-reliant. We have to think through this. We have to be mature about our situation and then get rid of the excuses. And I think Mzwandile is a perfect example of a young man. How old is he, by the way, Angela?
He's almost 30.
He's almost 30. So yeah, technically, I think youth is classified up to the age of 35. So he's still fairly youngish. But yeah, I think that self-reliance and self-resilience is absolutely amazing. And kudos on you for finding young people like this, going into rural communities and identifying a way that they can credibly contribute not just to their own livelihoods, but contribute to the community, but also their own sustainability. I love that. As we wrap up, final question, there's obviously the big think around 2045 for Tanda. You aim for 40% of the program participants to be youth. Talk to me about that, because that's pretty bold. That's not that far.
No, absolutely. And I think that kind of thing you can't force. And I said we're not going to use incentives. So I think what's going to drive this, if we want it to happen organically, is having those role models, those examples of success. So hopefully if we can get this incubator going and get funding to set that up and set these youth farms up and really find ways to mentor and train and support these youth to be successful, I think other youth will become on board, because the unemployment is there, the youth are there. It's just a matter of having something that looks like, that is a viable and worthwhile venture to join.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Angela, obviously the standard question that we ask at the end of a conversation is, where can people go to find out more about Tanda, about the organization, and maybe you are a corporate, maybe you are a business owner, maybe you are a leader in your space and you're looking for an innovative program project to get involved in, or maybe you've got the technology. You've heard that Mzwandile, this young farmer, he is doing his irrigation by hand at the moment. Maybe you are one of those people. You're connected. How can they find out about the journey, find out more about the story, and find out more about the organization?
Thanks. Yeah, the best will be go to our website. It's www.tanda.org. And they can reach us from there. Yeah.
Angela Larkin, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a great conversation. What a good way to start Monday. What a good way to feel about South Africa. There are amazing people in this country that are thinking about fixing the challenges, the day-to-day challenges that you and I, for whatever reason, we don't really think about. But Angela and her team, they're in rural KZN, and they are underway. They're currently underway in creating a massive shift for young people. They're introducing agroecology into those environments, and there's a sharp focus on young people. And the idea is that if we can show young people that they can become agri-entrepreneurs, if we can show them that they can work the land, that they can build these things at their homes in spaces that are standing available anyway, that maybe, just maybe, we can have an impact on that 46% unemployment rate amongst the youth, which I believe, and many of us do, it's at a crisis.
919 FM, your morning of impact. Sam Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place. Stay positive. 919.